Welcome to Book Backstory. My name is Carla Brandenburg, and I'm an award-winning author of romantic suspense and paranormal novels. This podcast is a walk along my journey. I plan to interview some of my favorite authors, share with you some of the things that get me excited to write a book, and the stumbling blocks during the process. My guest today is author Jess Michaels. Jess Michaels is the USA Today best-selling author of nearly 100 books under 3 pen names, mostly historical romance. She's been traditionally published with small presses, and went fully indie in 2015. Whatever there is to experience in publishing, she's pretty much lived it. She lives in Dallas, Texas with her fantastic husband and their adorable dog, Elton. Welcome, Jess. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I first met Jess at a library author event when I was first starting out. As we got to talking, I realized she was the mastermind behind a website called The Passionate Pen, which I'd found while looking for author resources. Not only did she write fun books, she shared the things she had learned to give the rest of us a hand up. So let me say thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. I loved doing that site. I had a lot of fun. I mean, if we don't help each other, I don't really know what the point is.
Right? Yeah. And especially, these days, it just seems like authors really need to help each other out. There's so much competition that the only way we get any traction is to talk about each other as well.
Yeah, and honestly, like in the end, you're kind of competing against yourself. So if you're pulling down other people, or you're trying to do something weird behind somebody's back, like it doesn't actually help you. More often than not, it just doesn't really do anything or hurts you. So I mean, like I only have so many books, and I have a ton of books. But I mean, if I write a book and somebody reads it and they love it, and then they're looking for another book and they've read all of my books, it does not hurt me at all if they go off and find somebody else that I recommend.
Absolutely.
And it can only help me and help that other person.
Right. So I'm a fan of historical romance, but I'm not one of those people who did well in history in school. So when people start complaining about historical accuracy, they often leave me in the dark. One of the things I appreciate about your books more than other historical romances is the way your heroines make sense for their time period. I can think of one author in particular who I just won't read because despite my level of historical ignorance, her heroines just clearly couldn't exist. They either wouldn't be allowed to act the way they do or wouldn't have the knowledge they've been given. It's a slippery slope in regard to current literary expectation versus accuracy. Do you get pushback about how you portray your characters in time?
Not really. I think because I've been around so long, I don't really get the pushback, because the people that are like really strict historical accuracy, like everything must be exactly right, I wanted to write to you to tell you how wrong you are, people have already kind of given up on me. They found me a long time ago and they decided I wasn't the person for them. And the people that are more interested in kind of like the emotional development, the character development, and they don't mind what they call a wallpaper historical, which I think is meant as a slur, but I embrace fully and completely. I love it. I love wallpaper. I like enough history that it feels like history, but I don't want to know every detail of the battle in 1812. I don't care. And that's not what I'm interested in writing about. And I assume that that's not what my readers are interested in reading about. So I think that for the most part, the pushback is pretty much over. Every once in a while you get someone that says, no one ever act like that, or they're too modern. But for the most part, I'm sort of at the point where I have a readership that already knows what to expect from me, which is because the point for me is that like a heroine, especially because it tends to be pushback against how a heroine acts. If you give them the right motivation as to why they know something or why they're doing something, or they give consequences for if they do something that they quote unquote shouldn't be doing, then you sort of address that. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not it's just having them do something and getting away with it won't necessarily work. But if I have them do it and know that they're going to not get away with it, or they do it and they don't get away with it, or they do it anyway because they need to do it, that gives a lot more stakes to the story anyway.
Yeah. Well, and I think it helps that we've had this, I'm sure you've probably seen the Bridgerton series. And, they're not true to the books. Well, they are mostly true to the books, but I think that also helps because they've adapted it for television in a way that it's imagination. Nobody expects it to be accurately portrayed. It's just fun.
Well, and additionally, I mean, I think historical accuracy is a really slippery slope, because historically accurate to what? Georgette Heyer? yeah, she wasn't historically accurate. She was telling Georgia higher Regency. You
Right.
know, Jane Austen was telling current times, but she was doing it in a satirical way. Like, who writes the history books? Who decides what is historically accurate? Who leaves something out? Who leaves a whole entire group of people out? Who pretends like something didn't happen because it doesn't suit for them when they're writing the history books? I mean, it's just that, you know, historical accuracy is a fallacy in a lot of ways. And then sometimes it's just a great big flag somebody waves to be exclusionary to either a group of people, or, you know, someone that they don't like, or something that they don't like, or, you know, for some motive that's they're not trying to actually make public. So, you know, I mean, to me, I don't know how much I really want to subscribe to the concept of this is historically accurate, but it's only historically accurate within a very narrow window.
Right. Right. Well, and that goes to even contemporary. I know I went to a writers conference not long ago where they talked about, you know, television versus a book, and versus the truth. You know, you talk about I'll take a CSI for instance. You know, you don't get the results from a DNA test right away. So on television, they have to have it right away because they only have 30 minutes to solve the crime, or 60 minutes to solve the crime. So the key is to sell what you're writing convincingly, and whether it's accurate or not, people don't have to worry as long as you've sold it convincingly.
Right. And if the only thing that we could reflect on as historically accurate in 100 years was, well, how, you know, how were crimes solved in the 21st century, they would say, oh, they were very advanced in their technology, which we are. But if all they could see was CSI, that limited window would give them a not particularly accurate view, but they would be absolutely claiming it was historically accurate.
Right.
So yeah.
So let's talk about your pen names. I know you've written just a couple different nom de plumes. Can you talk about how that came about?
So I started writing full time in 1999, and I wrote historical romance, pretty much exclusively historical romance. And it was back in the time before indie publishing really took off. There wasn't really a method of indie publishing that exists now. So I was trying to be traditionally published, and I wrote the kind of books that I wrote for Avon. And then I decided I wanted to write a really sexy book. And there was a small press at the time that did really, really, really sexy anthologies. And so I went with Jess Michaels when I sold a couple of those short novellas to go into this anthology, because it's my part of my first name and my husband's first name, which I thought was cute. And then that was what I thought I would write under. And then HarperCollins bought 2 historical romances from me in 2004. The first one came out in 2005, Scandalous. And they had a debut author program, and I had not been published in full-length fiction, but they didn't want someone to search my name and say, oh, she's not really a debut author. So they asked me to come up with a different pen name, which is how I ended up writing as Jenna Peterson. And so that was what I wrote at exclusively for a long time. And then they wanted to launch an erotic romance line. So then I was writing under both of those names for HarperCollins. And then in 2010, I wrote a zombie comedy, kind of a romantic comedy, urban fantasy. And we didn't want that necessarily to cross-pollinate with the historical romance, because it might not be necessarily the biggest crossover audience. So then I wrote under my actual legal name, Jessie Peterson. So those are my 3 pen names, but that's why, just a whole different genre, and then just this whole thing. And then ultimately when I went indie, I just dropped everything else. I didn't really want to write urban fantasy, and those books weren't particularly successful. And I just really wanted to write historical romance, and I was writing spicier than I had for Avon. So Jess Michaels just seemed like the best place to just sort of land. Okay. Plus, no one ever spelled Peterson or Jessie right. So,
so I know that you're 100% indie now, right?
Yes, in 2015, I had just left Sam Hain, which was my publisher after Avon, and we went fully indie, and I haven't published anything traditionally since 2014.
Okay. I've been indie most of my career, so I know for me it was a no-brainer. And obviously there are a lot of authors now who are, you know, the ones who've been with the publishing houses who are moving over to indie or to hybrid authors. Can you tell me what your decision-making process was to leave the traditional publishing behind?
Oh, that's such a loaded question. I did not have a fantastic experience being traditionally published. I'm really fast. I write books fast and I write them really well fast. I write really good books fast, and they would not allow me to publish at the rate that I wanted to. There are a lot of occasionally abusive elements to traditional publishing, and I just didn't feel like doing it anymore. If I'm going to run in a rat race, I'll run in my own race. I don't want to run for somebody else that doesn't appreciate me. So for me, it really became that I could have the control over what I did. So, I mean, I had publishers that they put a book in the wrong category. We pointed it out to them and it took them a month and a half to fix it. Well, by then the momentum's gone. You've destroyed the book. And then you're telling me that my book didn't do well. And that's why you want to pay me less money. And it's like, you screwed it up and then you didn't fix it.
Yeah.
So it's not that things don't get screwed up. I mean, you know, we're a small business and my husband works full-time for me. That's his full-time job now. This is our 100% how we make all of our income is through my writing. And we screw stuff up like all the time, but we fix it because we care about it.
Right.
We care about my future. We care about our career and, you know, and what happens in the future and how much, you know, how much we can support ourselves. So,
yeah,
I mean, I'll take that every day over somebody else who doesn't really care. I'm just a cog in the wheel for them that they can replace.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that swayed me too is that you still have to do all the legwork yourself. I mean, when you first starting out and they take you in, it's like, well, you still got to promote yourself and you still have to invest in yourself. So it's, for me, all the benefits of having a traditional publisher behind me was that to get me on a bookshelf, you know, I could do that if I do the legwork, I could get into bookshelves myself, you know, so.
Well, and that, I mean, when I first started writing for traditional publishing, and especially like HarperCollins, you know, or Pocket or Hachette, which were the three major big publishers that I worked for, you know, getting that mass distribution in paperback was like everything. It was everything. But by the time I left, I mean, I make 85%, 90% of my income through ebooks. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I mean, it's a very small amount of sales that is paperback for me. And so being on every single shelf and every single store doesn't have as much meaning to me. And I think the difference is that if you've never experienced that wide distribution where you can walk into any Barnes and Noble, which is all that's left. It used to be Walden Books and you know, B. Dalton, and then, you know, Borders and right. There's so many more. But I mean, I've had that experience. I understand the desire to have that experience. There's nothing wrong with that desire. But for me, I mean, I've had it and I don't know how much it would really matter. You know, I mean, I don't think it would really make that much of a dent in what the paperback sales were, because so much for genre fiction and romance, especially, e-reader is king. So I don't really need any help for somebody to find my book with an e-reader.
Right. So getting away from the business end of things, which is always business end is always the hardest part for me. With all the books you've written, what is the spark that keeps you moving on to the next book? The part about writing that excites you and keeps you coming back to the keyboard?
I honestly think it's just characters. I get really excited about, you know, the stories I'm going to tell for the next character, and, you know, knowing what's going to happen and letting that unfold. And that I'm a very strategic writer, and by that I mean, you know, I'll think of an idea and I'll think of the characters and I'm, you know, getting everything ready and I do a certain amount of plotting, but there always comes a point where I kind of run out of the space that I've plotted into, and then it's like, oh, cool, now what's going to happen? And then I have to kind of rediscover what's going to happen in that next part. It's always exciting to me to know. I plan for them to go left and suddenly they're like, oh no, I got to go right. And I'm like, all right, let's do that. You know, so I'm not a full pantser, but I'm not a completely non-movable plotter either. So I kind of get to do this flow of writing, and that part for me is always just completely joyful. Like that is my safest, happiest place, is when I'm actually writing a book. So I would never not write. Publishing is oftentimes not very fun, but whether I'm doing it or someone else is doing it for me, it's not super fun because there's so much out of your control. And there's a lot out of my control with writing, but the thing that I can control is the stories that I get to tell and I get excited about, and when I write them and where I write them, and, you know, the quality that I write them at. And that's really fun for me.
Yeah. So you're saying you're a platter, but you also are a pantser. What do they call that? A platzer?
Yeah, I have, some people say plantser, some people say plotster, but yeah, that's pretty much what I am. So is that in between space?
Yeah. Do you plan your series ahead of time? So for instance, if you're going to write, I know you've got books, series of books that are like from 3 books to 10 books. Do you know ahead of time how many books you're going to have in a series?
Generally, yeah. I'm much more intentional about that now. So I knew that when the Duke series, which is my 10 book series, I knew the 1797 Club would have 10 books, 10 Dukes. And I had an idea of what every single one of them would kind of be about. And that allowed me to seed in the whole series. So in book 1, book 2, book 3, which they're very, very tightly wound together, just story wise, I was also laying the seeds for book 4, book 5, book 4, book 5. I'm kind of laying the seeds for book 6, 6, 7. So that way I can I don't have to introduce, here's 12 characters or 15 characters that you have to get to know. Good luck. I can do it in a way that makes it accessible to readers, and also makes it so that you can read each book individually without having to go back if you start on book 4, but also makes people excited about, by the time we got to Ewan's book, which was book 4, people were so excited for him because I had laid in all of these little pieces about him in this as a secondary character in other books. So, I mean, intentionally, as far as, driving sales and driving interest in books, I think it always helps me to know this series that I just started, the Regency Royals. I already knew the overarch of the whole thing. I know who the characters are. I know, who they're going to be matched with, at least a basic story, if not more detail. And then we went and we shot the custom covers. I went and I shot the custom covers in LA let's see, the first book came out in June. So it was at the end of May. And then I sort of got to feel that energy between the models. And then it became okay, that really informs the next layer of how I'm going to plan it. And so then it became much tighter of who is who and what is their interaction, what is their energy like together. And now I'm really to the point where I'm writing book 3. I'm about halfway done with book 3, and I'm starting to get really, really excited about book 4 and book 5. So
So are you having 5 Regency Royals?
yes, yeah. So it's all of the children. So the first one is about Princess. Second one is about the adopted daughter, who is, I'm not going to give it away. So she's the adopted daughter in the family. Third one is about the kind of wildly about rakish prince. The fourth one is about the king who's just inherited, and then the fifth one is about their mother. So it's my first seasoned romance. She's in her 50s, and so is her hero.
Okay, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, I'm so excited to tell her. I can't even take it. I'm so excited to write their book because it's gonna be so good. I'm like, yay! I don't know if people want to read it. I mean, I know they do because everyone always says, "Oh yeah, we want to read older characters." Well, here they are. Have fun. Here's some very hot older people. Enjoy.
Yeah, we don't die when we turn 50.
Right? I am turning 45 on Monday, and I can say I would it's very exciting to me that I'm going to write someone that's a contemporary to me.
Well, I'm over 50, so I can tell you that life goes on.
Yeah.
So I've seen that you're working on, and I quote, a filthy contemporary romance. Can you tell me a little about that one?
That's an accident. So I had no intention of writing in another contemporary. I've written the urban fantasies were all contemporary. There were a couple Jess books that were contemporary that I published independently back at the beginning, and they're fine. But I keep wanting to write a Christmas book that would be I get tired of the Hallmark construct that high-powered working woman must be miserable because she doesn't have kids, goes back to her hometown, meets this guy who I don't know, carves ice or something, and leaves the guy that's her, high-powered lawyer boyfriend because, wanting to have fun and sex and money and no kids is a bad thing, right? It's a bad value. And then she ends up living with the guy who, I don't know, he plays Santa Claus and he carves ice sculptures and he makes cupcakes. Yeah, and she always ends up starting a cupcake bakery. I am maybe the only romance novelist that actually watches those movies and wants to punch my television. I'm not into them at all. They make me actually physically angry. I said to my husband, let's watch this one and I'll live tweet it. But about halfway through, I need to stop live tweeting it because I just want to kill somebody. I don't even want to finish this thing. I was so angry. And maybe I'm just watching the wrong ones, but that Hallmark Christmas romance season does literally nothing for me. And so I love the idea of writing a holiday romance, but not necessarily writing that traditional thing. And I was pondering a very former famous couple. They're not formally famous. They were formerly a couple. They're still famous. and I thought, what if the reason they broke up wasn't this reason that they gave publicly, but this other reason, which is very romantic? And I'm like, ooh, I kind of want to write that. So I started, and the next thing I knew, I had like 10,000 words of it and like 50 pages of it. And I was like, what am I doing? Am I doing this? So it's happening, but I need to focus on the thing that actually has to be done. And I'm not the kind of person that can write 2 projects at once very easily. So I have not messed around with it this week because I'm trying to get back into the Prince book. But my intention is to finish it and it will come out before Christmas, I'm sure. I'm not going to do it under Jess Michaels because I don't want to mess up my also bots on Amazon.
Yeah.
So it'll be under another name, but I'm excited about it. It's just fun because it's not something that it's just something that I'm having fun writing.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, if I'm going to do it, it's going to be dirty because I like sexy stuff. I write very sexy stuff. I can't imagine not writing sexy stuff. And again, I don't think that the only value that needs to exist is like sweet when it comes to holiday romance. So it is all my middle finger to Hallmark potentially. Sorry, Hallmark. Clearly you got a big audience for it, so it's awesome. But because again, like I don't judge anybody else for liking it. It's just that it makes me actually physically angry. So I need to not. But I mean, I like the idea of people that are both high powered and still like can like each other and can want to be loving toward each other, and that there's nothing wrong with wanting to being a driven person or especially as a woman, like being driven and being career focused and doing all that stuff that doesn't exclude you from being, I don't know, whatever the value is that they put on that or take away from that.
Yeah. Well, I think in the Hallmark and true confession, I do like the Hallmark movies. In fact, I wrote one that I tried to sell to Hallmark and they didn't pick it up, which is fine. But I did find in the process, it's very difficult to hit all of their plot points.
Yeah.
Because you got to have the ice skating and you have to have the snowball fight and you have to have the hot chocolate.
Cookies or cupcakes.
Right. And I found that
the Christmas fair.
Yeah. And as much as I appreciate that when I'm watching it, well, at least some of them, there's some of them that I just looked at and I said, oh, please, not again. But then there's the other ones that it's like they do. I don't know. There's some storylines that do touch me. Most of them are pretty cookie cutter, but no pun intended.
And like, I think there's clearly a value in that because people are eating it up. And that's the thing. Like, I cannot like something and that doesn't mean it doesn't have value. Like 100%, because like you heard a lot of that when 50 Shades came out and people will still be like 50 Shades, blah, blah, blah. I was beyond, I didn't enjoy the books. I read the first one and I was like, no, I'm good now. I'm fine. I don't need to read anymore. But the fact is something in that made people so excited that they entered into romance. So something in that was viscerally powerful to people who read it. And that is worth understanding, even if you don't like it. And it means that it has value, even if I don't particularly value it personally as a person. But as an author, I have to understand that that exists and that there's a powerful element to it.
Right.
So again, like, I mean, so be very careful. I love it. Like all of you rock on. Like I very much enjoy how happy everyone gets when it's Hallmark Christmas movie season and Christmas story season. But I'm just like, no, I'm good. I'm fine. I'm gonna go over here.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I
came from a small town, and I'll tell you what, I'm never going back there. Like, I have no interest in going back to their Christmas fair. Thank you very much. So that may be part of it. Is that like I escaped a small town, and the concept of going back there is like it actually makes me feel a little nauseous. Although to be fair, I did marry a boy from my hometown, but we don't live in my hometown, and he also does not want to return. So maybe that's part of it, is that I'm like, ew, no, thanks, no.
Yeah. Like I said, I had to throw my hand in because it's like, I can do that. And so I did. I wrote one, and after I finished writing it, it's like, I'm never going to write another one.
Yeah. Because again, sometimes we love reading something, but we don't like writing it.
Yeah.
And that we want to experience it, but we don't necessarily want to create it.
Yeah.
And that's cool. Like I like I tend to watch more like television and movies just because I like at the computer all day, staring at words all day, and I've really gotten to the point where like sometimes I just don't want to read. Like I
Yeah.
just don't want to because I'm tired. I don't want to look at words anymore. And like Ted Lasso is a great example. Like I love that more than it's so good. Like it's so powerful. It's so good. I could never write that character. Like I could never write that experience adequately, but I really like experiencing it as a consumer.
Hmm.
So again, like in fact, I would be annoyed if I had to do it because then I would have to like dissect it. And I don't want to dissect it. I just want to enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. So getting back a little bit to okay, so the hallmarks are also sweet, and there's a whole discussion about sweet versus steamy or filthy versus, whatever.
Clean. They love to call it clean.
Yeah. So, I have my own preferences on what I'm going to call it. And I actually get annoyed with some people who call it other things. And I went to a writer's meeting one time where they were talking about how they write clean romances. And I just wanted to said, I almost wanted to gag. In fact, I didn't go back to a second meeting because it's like, so what does that make mine?
Yeah. The concept that like you consider sex to be dirty is just
Right.
weird to me.
Yeah, I don't get that either because, I think it's healthy and I think it's, and which brings me to, there are readers who object to an open door romance. Some people skip over those parts. Some people really relish them. I've heard from a lot of authors who get negative feedback about seeing into the bedroom. You're pretty upfront about what a reader can expect. And I think I am too. Do you get feedback from your readers who express appreciation or lack thereof?
Again, I mean, I think because I've been around so long and I've written so many books, like I tend to have like a readership that knows what they're getting. So most of the time people are just like, yay, it's super hot junk book, hooray! Right? They're just excited. But every once in a while I get that like 1 star, this book is totally filthy. And I love that more than anything. I will post that thing on Twitter. I'm like, look, someone says it's just porn. And I swear to God, the sales on that just go through the roof.
Yeah.
People are like, it's just porn. Yes, which of course it isn't. That is not accurate. I mean, nothing wrong with porn, but it's not what I write.
Right.
But I mean, like, I think that those 1 star, like sex, this is all just sex, but they sell a book more than anything. Like that's the top negative review. I am joyous because more people will be like, sweet, like they'll get like 300 helpfuls on a review like that. And it's not because they're like, yay, I don't want to buy sex. It's because they're like, oh my God, thank you for telling me how sexy this book is. Additionally, I would like to add that I don't want someone to buy my books who is going to be upset by them.
Right.
That's a waste of their money. I don't want them to be unhappy. I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste their time. So that is why I think things like trigger warnings are super important because that's like actually damaging someone. I don't want to do that.
Right.
Or being very upfront, like this is a sexy freaking book. So if a person posts a 1 star and says this book is super sexy, I don't like super sexy. What happens is that a bunch of people who like super sexy are very excited. And B, people that don't like super sexy are like, ooh, this might not be the author for me. And then we all skip the time wasting and the money wasting.
Right. Right.
Like that's good.
Yeah.
Like I am not for everyone.
Right.
I am not for everyone. And that's okay. Like I do find it funny when someone has read, like I've read like 65 of her books and I hated all of them. And I'm like, you can stop. Like it's okay. I'm not for you. I am not your girl. There are so many great people out there that you will like better than me. Like that is weird to me. Mostly just because like, why do you torture yourself?
Right.
But I'm okay. Like if people don't like my book and they want to say they don't like my book, it's kind of none of my business at a certain point.
Right.
Like it's between them and themselves, and other readers. And, I mean, the only time that I really care if someone says something is if they say I've done something that's problematic or damaging, and then I would want to address it. But I mean, if someone just doesn't like my books or thinks that I write too much sex or not enough sex or don't like my character, that's okay. Like you're allowed to not like it. It's not, I don't own it anymore. Once you buy it, you own it.
Right. Well, and it goes to branding. People know what to expect from you. And for those people who don't, hopefully they're going to find out. And they're, like you said, they're not going to buy 65 books if they don't like it.
Yeah.
And if they do, well, then they're not telling you the exact truth, I don't think.
Well, at some point I'm like, I mean, you must like a little because you bought the next one and the next one and the next one. But yeah, it's fine. Like, but I also don't seek that out. Like, I don't want to hurt my own feelings, by like going out and looking at a bunch of reviews. Like sometimes the sex, it's only sex. Like you happen to catch it out of the corner of your eye, and then I'm like, ooh, really? But okay. But I mean, for the most part, I don't go on to Goodreads. I don't look at my reviews on Amazon. I don't go seeking that stuff out, because it's really, it's not meant for me. It's meant for other readers.
Right. You've got a new release out, To Protect a Princess, which is your Regency Royals book #1.
Yes.
Which was released, just a week ago?
It was July 20th. So about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago when we're recording this. I don't know when it's coming out, but yeah, so in July it came out, and it's the first book in the Regency Royal series. So they are a royal family of an island that is in the North Sea, and they come to England in order to match their oldest princess, Ilaria, to a titled gentleman, so that they can sort of do some border control, border protection, where the English won't come in and, sort of take over as they were wont to do during this time period. And she ends up falling in love with her bodyguard instead. So it's very, very romantic and sexy, and the cover is a straight up riff on the Bodyguard poster from Whitney Houston and Kevin Costner, and it's I love it. I love everything about it. So it's Ginger Hero, and it's really, really good. So I hope people will go out and get it. And it is the first in a 5-book series about the entire family.
Okay. Well, congratulations, and I wish you the best of luck with it.
Thank you so much.
So just a reminder, this is Jess Michaels, To Protect a Princess.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me again today, Jess.
Thank you again for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.